Hello, Roy.
Hey Warren, how you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing good too. Doing well too. Uh yeah, there's been a lot going on, you know, lately, and unfortunately this news just came through, and in regards to Prentis Hancock. So we thought we would do this special show tonight. We've been wanting to gear up towards Mission of the Darians, and that was our next episode, which ironically enough really featured Prentice in a significant light, and we thought it would be very special to go live and to do it on a special day and to talk about not only the episode but of course Prentice and remember him.
Yeah, 100%, Roy. It has certainly been a week. I'm sure for everybody in the Moonbase Alpha family, and our hearts and well wishes go out to Prentice, of course, and his entire family,
Yeah.
who broke the news early this week. And we had sort of suspected that Prentice hadn't been doing well as of late, and unfortunately, here we are. It's hard to believe 50 years later, and we were even just about to have him on for this episode. That was our original thought.
Right.
And Roy, you spoke to him as recently as a couple weeks back, and he unfortunately couldn't make it. So then we really had a good sense of yeah, he wasn't well. So but then we decided to turn this episode into a tribute to Prentice, and of course to everybody we've lost over the years. That montage we created back in 2021 for the first virtual event we did, and yes, and it's sadly time for an update. We should probably include Chris Penfold and Prentice in that. It's a beautiful tribute. It's one of my favorite pieces of music of all time.
Yeah.
It was hard for me not to get teary-eyed here just watching that, just ready to go live here. But thank you all for joining us in what we're hoping to be a fun and celebratory show to the memory of all our dear lost elfin friends, and to everything coming in the future as well. It's still a very exciting time, and there's lots in the works. And Roy, I just like to on a personal level thank you for joining in and for helping me all these weeks with this special podcast, and these episodes have been a lot of fun, and they will continue to do so moving forward. Of course, we're only halfway through, so
No,
um,
absolutely, Warren. I'm very happy to be a part of it, and thank you for everything you've done on your side of things. And yeah, it's been a an adventure, and it's really crazy to think that we've gone. This is going to be our 22nd episode of Space 1999 that we'll be covering. So very shortly, we will be winding down to come towards the end of the first year, first season, year one, however you'd like to label it. But it's definitely those 24 episodes. I mean, they are very powerful and thought provoking, heartfelt, and here we are 50 years later and we're still talking about it, right? So it's pretty amazing. One thing I do want to, I saw one of the comments from Jeff Rubel, yes, and he mentioned about Suzanne Rockhead. Suzanne Rockhead is also somebody we will not forget, and time is just going by. I mean, time flows like a river, as they say, and it's insane how the years just go by. I mean, Suzanne Rockette passed away around this time 5 years ago. If memory is serving correctly, it was in May of 2020, and it just again, it's insane how the years are going by. So yes, I mean, we're definitely full of sadness, but for the rest of the show, we're definitely going to honor those that we've lost, and honor the show and make this a fun time, make it celebratory in that sense, and remember the show fondly, remember the folks that put together this, the Space 1999, and keep it very positive. So we definitely have sadness in our hearts, but we definitely have joy as well too.
Absolutely, well said. I couldn't have said it better, my friend. Just brought up that quick comment. I just wanted to start things off and say that we're in good company because I believe, if I'm not mistaken, NASA Cat is Mr. Jeffrey Jones.
Oh,
Uh,
very nice.
and we had Jeffrey on a few weeks back, and
Yeah.
just a fascinating fellow, and discussion all around with, if you recall, Roy, Jeffrey, and Philip
Yes, absolutely.
Leavenworth. It was a great episode. And Jeffrey, I saw your, if it is you, I'm sure it is. I saw your email just before we went live. Sorry, I haven't had a chance to respond, but I'll certainly get back to you. And Jeff is planning on joining us this September for the Burbank Los Angeles convention, and yeah, I think it'll be. Jeff goes way back to the
He goes back to
very
1978.
yes, the very first Space 1999 convention. So he
Yeah.
has a long history of planning events and working with the celebrities and creating these fun times and moments for the entire fan community. So welcome.
Welcome, Jeff. Looking forward to meeting you in person.
For sure. And one other thing we're going to do here today, folks, for anybody out there, is that I just dropped a link in the chat. Now, this is a special link that will actually bring you onto well, it'll bring you into what we call the green room, right? Sort of backstage. And if you want, then throughout the episode, you're welcome. We'll bring you on one at a time to just tell a quick story, your favorite Prentis Hancock moment or memory of meeting Prentis down through the years. A funny little tidbit, something memorable that stuck with you, things like that.
Yeah, and if you haven't actually had the opportunity to meet him in person, that's okay. But maybe something that you recall
Come
from,
on,
from the
absolutely, yeah,
show, or whether
yeah,
it's 1999. Prentice is very well known in Doctor Who, and that was a very special to him because he's talked about it in a lot of the different broadcasts that he's been on to talk about his career. So, yeah, if you have something that really resonates with you and just something that you would like to share with us, please do so, and we'd love to hear it. So whether you've been, again, in person, meeting him or not, we're here to hear your story. We just ask that you try to keep it maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes, because we're going to try. If we're not sure how many people are going to want to come on, a lot of times people want to come on. Sometimes, people are a little shy in front of the camera. No worries about that. And if you don't want to come on live, please feel free to, let us know in the chat section. But as Warren said, we are opening this up where you can come on camera and, share yourself with the audience, which will be kind of special. So we thank you for that.
Yeah, for sure. And with that, then there are a few comments rolling in already. We have a nice turnout today, and this I think we scheduled this to try and hit as many different time zones as possible. So we're 2:30 Pacific, and there was even, unfortunately, some people who are still at work. We apologize for that, but we did. Most importantly, want to try and catch the folks over in the UK before it was too late. So it's around 10:30 over there. But thank you to everybody for joining us. And of course, you can always catch this on the rerun. This will be streamed to several Facebook pages now, and of course the YouTube channels that Roy and I have going. And special thanks to Anthony as well, because we're streaming for the first time to his Space 1999 online alpha page, which has a large following as well. So we're happy to introduce this show to everybody over there as well, and thank you for your support.
Yeah, thank you, Anthony. And I see that we're pretty much well represented throughout the world, as I'm seeing comments coming in from Australia with Jenny. She said 50 years still is fresh and wonderful today. I see Silvana's out there from Italy. So welcome, everyone. Welcome, Silvana. Welcome, Jenny. Welcome, other folks that, as the comments are coming in, we'll go through them, but just want to say hi and thank you for joining us, because I know with the time zones, it can be a little tricky. So we try to accommodate. We have folks out there from the UK, and we also have the US, as well as Canada. Sure.
We have a lot of Jeffreys out there. So Jeffrey Hastings is joining us. Says Prentice was always gracious at the convention events. I remember him from, and I absolutely, Jeffrey. He was a very sweet man, very sincere, and very approachable from the fan perspective, and just loved everybody and loved being there and sharing those moments with us.
Yeah, he definitely liked to share his time, and by attending the conventions, which is remembered. We remember.
Yeah, for sure. Roy, do you have any particular remembrances or any stories you'd like to tell right off the bat?
Um, yeah, in fact, in regards to the 2017 event that I did with Gordon and Todd, and that was in Parsippany, New Jersey.
Mhm.
What happened was I had to go pick up Prentice at the airport, and I was a little nervous because it really the last time I had seen him prior to that was in the event that was done in 2012 in Burbank, and that's where you and I met, Warren. That was, which is hard to believe, that was, oh my God, 13 years ago. Lucky 13, right? And so anyway, with that said, I hadn't seen him since then, and I had corresponded, and we were, going through email, and we hadn't done any type of video chat. So all of this with the video is really over the last, I would say, I mean, COVID, with everything that was negative, I mean, the positive, if there's any positives with COVID, is that it opened up the virtual world with connections, not only with our fandom, but with other fandoms as well. And so corresponding with Prentice, it was really done through email. So when he was coming off the plane, and then I got to meet him for the very first time since 2012, 5 years had gone by. He was very gracious, and very happy to be there, and everything from that moment on was really a delight. So sadly, that was the last time I did see him in person, but it was really nice to have him be a part of that event. And yeah, and again, talking about time, that was 8 years ago, which is crazy. And then of course, we were just talking about the virtual events too, because he was a part of that as well. But again, that was virtually, and that was what, 5 years ago, and then 4 years ago, Warren, if I'm correct on that, because there was the
Yeah,
two.
yeah.
20 and
Yeah.
21, I think, if I'm not
2021
mistaken.
and 22, we did virtuals. Yeah.
22. Yeah. So at least we had those connections. We were trying to, I think in 2023 in November, I was trying to do a kind of a celebration for the Breakaway Day, and in the sense of the first filming of Breakaway. And we were trying to have him on. And I remember you were really trying to help me with having him on with the visual portion of it, but we were having some technical difficulties, and it was audio only. But yeah, in regards to your question that I made very long-winded, that is my answer back in 2017. So as you see, folks, this is why we do a 2-minute to 3-minute limit, because we don't want people going on and on like I just did. So don't be
You're
me.
good. Not a problem. Not a problem. Roy, thanks for all that. Um, yeah, lots of comments rolling in, and I'll just really quickly my first
Well,
sort
I
of
was just going to say,
fan.
Warren, before you go on, what was your first recollection of Prentice?
So aside from seeing him in the series, my first sort of fan uh, related experience with him probably came in the late early 90s, and it was via a videotape, actually, that I believe was filmed by our friend Phil Merkel. And so it was from a convention in the, of course, late 80s, early 90s that Prentice had attended in North America. And maybe I'm 10 years out. Maybe it was 2000, 2001, like after Breakaway and the New York Con. Was Prentice was at Breakaway, right?
Yes, he was, absolutely, in 1999. Yep.
Yeah.
And
But
he
either
was
way,
also, I believe he was at the New York and he was there in 2000 also, and that was in New York City.
that I think this is the one I'm thinking of then, because I'm sure that Phil recorded it, and
Yeah.
and through the pre-internet fan community, I got a hold of this. Somebody knew somebody who knew somebody who knew Phil, and had
Yeah.
recorded it, and it was a panel discussion that everybody was on, of course. And the strange thing was, I had never seen Prentice other than seeing him in the series, so it was probably 20 years later, and it
Mhm.
took me a while to even realize who was speaking at that point. The quality was very, very poor, of course, VHS, and it was probably third generation. So it was very degraded, but that was probably my first experience of seeing him outside of the series. And then I met him for the first time face to face, of course, in Burbank in 2012. And yeah, I don't have to tell you, he was lovely. He was wonderful, and of course we went on to see him in Peterborough a couple years later, and then in 17, and then on a couple of virtuals. I think well, and you had him on your show too. So yeah, and
Yeah, that was in 20. That was in May of 2020.
that's
That
right.
on. Yeah, that was actually one of the early shows. It was the 10th episode that I did, and it's crazy to think, now we're on like 265. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Time is
yeah,
just again, time has just marched on. It's
yeah.
insane.
No, for sure. Claudia said, yeah, he'd grown a beard and lost some weight in those 20 years. So
Yeah. Yeah.
everybody changes. You're right, Claudia.
Yep.
No, for sure.
But you know what?
Lots
The
of
more we change, the more we stay the same.
well, that's what they say. I'm not quite convinced of that one, Roy, but we'll
I'm
see.
trying to make this lighthearted.
Oh no, I know. No. Oh, well, good fun. Christopher Michael Dalton, one of my friends who's a Space 1999 fan, told me that my demeanor reminded him of Paul Morrow. I shared this in a Facebook message with Prentice. He thought it was funny. Yeah, Prentice was readily available for the last few years via Facebook Messenger, and that's kind of a cool thing that of course, many 20, 30 years ago, we never as fans had that opportunity, but it was a fun dynamic to introduce to the fan community to just be able to reach out and message their favorite celebrity at any time.
No, absolutely. And that's what's really great about, one of the pros with the internet and social media is it definitely has opened up the doors for connecting on this level. So it's definitely a plus.
Right. Yeah. No, definitely, definitely. Ricardo's out there says, "Hey, Warren and Roy, looking forward to meet you and all the Elfin crew in September." Ricardo, thank you so much for your. I know you've been a big supporter of everything we've done these last 10 years or so between Roy and myself, and we're looking forward to meeting face to face as well as many new people, first time attendees, and of course the old
Thanks.
regime as well, Roy. Yeah.
Yep. No, absolutely. You know what? Fans are fans, and new Alphans, old Alphans alike. You know what? And considering us as old Alphans, and as those years go on, we become older and older. But yeah, no, definitely looking forward to meeting you, and thank you for that very nice post, Ricardo. Seriously, it's great because one of the fun things about meeting fans is learning when they first started watching Space 1999, finding out what episodes that they enjoyed, who their favorite characters are, just different things that they loved about the series, things that really just sparked their interest. And it's really cool because everybody has their different high points when it comes to the show, and it's very interesting. And also the fact that it's worldwide. I mean, that is just so cool. I mean, Moonbase Alpha was an international base, and that's what's so cool about the show. It's an international fan base, so there's that connection, and it really works out true to the show in those terms.
Yeah. No, 100%, 100%. We've got a couple people roaming around backstage here, Roy. Looks like a couple people are having issues with connecting. If you're out there and weren't able to connect the first time, I'll just sort of take you out of the green room, but go ahead and try and reconnect if you like. But we do have somebody live and ready to go here, Roy, who you're familiar with. If you'd like to bring on.
Drum roll, please. Hey.
It is Mr. Richard Bendall. How you doing?
Hey, doing, Rich?
Bad, yourself?
Well, excellent here. Thanks for joining us.
Doing well. Nice to see you, Rich.
Yeah, great to see you guys too. I was just about to hit enter here, and I'm like, I hope I'm remembering the line right. And in Black Sun, Victor said to John, "Was it a good man, Paul?" Is that right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So I just sent it over. Yeah, no, it's unfortunate circumstances, but always a pleasure to see you guys. And what a great episode. This is right up there with Last Sunset to me, to see Paul kicking space butt. So,
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. This was a great episode for a lot of the secondary characters to get out of that Moonbase Alpha environment and see them at their best in a variety of different situations and circumstances, for sure.
So, Rich, is this one of your favorite episodes out of curiosity?
it definitely is. I think in some ways it's the epitome of an epic story, um, with that's both big and it has the personal elements too, right? Helen is in danger. They're all in danger. They're trying to figure their way out, literally. Um, they don't really. They have no idea what they're facing.
Yeah.
And the little people are kind of their allies at the beginning, which was an interesting little element that I don't think many shows have had. A throwback in a small way to Wizard of Oz, but it just resonates to me. Like, you've got the Forbidden Planet style matte paintings, you've got this godlike figure. I don't know what it doesn't have, to tell you the truth. Even some nudity. once the Blu-rays came out, we realized there was a little bit more showing than certainly Star Trek.
Yeah,
That's funny, Richard, because sorry, Roy, go ahead.
I was saying, no, a couple things kind of slipped through there. That's true.
I was just going to mention real quick that I actually rewatched the episode just a few nights ago, and it reminded me of a story, sort of an urban legend, urban myth, if you will, within fandom, that Joan Collins' dress was so short that actually Barbara was a little jealous, and that's why her dress that you see her in, the black one, had to be just as short or maybe even a little shorter.
That's funny.
It's crazy. Yeah, different world versus today, for sure.
And that's a good point too. Getting Joan Collins, she's so well remembered in her Trek episode, and completely different role, but I think she carries off that elitist, we have to do whatever we have to survive. Sorry, other people. Doesn't that kind of echo what we're seeing today? That kind of self-centeredness.
And what's interesting too is she has that type of attitude right up until the end, because after everything has occurred and Koenig is trying to bring them together, and he said, these people are your future. And what happens is the leader of I'll say the mutants, and his name is escaping me. Hayden. No, not Hayden. It was I'm sorry. It was Nadine. Nadine takes a step forward, and he's looking. And what happens is Kara, Joan Collins, kind of turns and looks at him, and kind of almost sizes him up, and then the camera just pulls back, and even just the way the direction is. I mean, Ray Austin directed this episode, and the way it just pulls back, and it's almost everything is laid out like a play almost, and it's just very profound. But with her, the expression that she gives him is that, to your point, Rich, that okay, it's time to shift gears. If these people are going to be, we're going to have to bond with these people, and he obviously is going to be the leading these people. She's attaching herself to him right from the onset. And it just shows you how shallow her character really is. You know what I mean? Elitists, however you want to describe it. I mean, she definitely portrays that type of individual through her actions. And what's great about it is it's done through her body language, which is remarkable, because it showcases that, and you pick up on it. It's very, very clear.
For sure. If I can use a Titanic analogy, she'll climb on the other bodies, so she's the one who survives on top. She's a survivor, literally. And the way she pulls off the role, though, she's not. You're not totally repulsed by her. She has a bit of a charisma, I find, but in a lot of ways she could be, if there's a year 2 connection, Devil's Planet, right?
Sure.
And the main character there, that kind of ruthless, you know, I'll do whatever I have to type of thing. But I think she played off, she played the role really well. And I don't think she's remembered in as much in sci-fi, but I think if you put up both episodes, I think Mission of the Darians, and City on the Edge of Forever, this one would stand comfortably beside it. I if I was going to watch either, I would lean towards this one. And the other one's great. That's how good this one is to me.
Yeah, that gives a testament of how much this episode, you enjoyed the episode. I am a huge Star Trek fan, as most folks know. And I'll say original series Star Trek, and with the City on the Edge of Forever. To me, that's these are two different type of episodes, but I think her performance is powerful in two different ways. In regards to comparisons, as far as the episodes, I probably would lean personally more towards City on the Edge of Forever, but that's just me. But I appreciate your commentary on that, Rich. Warren, I'm curious, what if you had to give your thoughts on that, if you had to lean towards City on the Edge of Forever or Mission of the Darians?
Well, that's a tough question because
it's apples and
oranges. Not only two different series, but two different premises, and two entirely different thematic undertones here, right? I remember watching an interview with Johnny Byrne actually, and when it comes to some of the moral and ethical decisions that the Darians made, of course. I mean, that was all, of course, based on sort of a true story. I remember Johnny saying it was based on a plane crash that happened in the Andes where people had to actually resort to cannibalism, and it's frightening to think about, but it did happen, and so as it's presented in the episode, and even the way they coda at the end with John and Alan talking, would you have done anything different, right? I mean, it's a really tough question to answer. But on top of that, then, I mean, of course, I'm always going to pick space over Star Trek. Sorry, Roy.
No, that's okay. I mean, I'm not saying I don't like the episode. I'm just saying in regards. But again, to me, they're totally two different episodes, and that's something I try not to. I think they both have a moral, though. I mean, my God, I mean, it's like, do you sacrifice the love of one to save millions or billions? I mean, really, it's billions. And that's what Kirk is faced with. Whereas with this, I mean, Alan poses the question, as Warren just said, when he says that, he said, and then I love Koenig's response. He says, remind me to tell you sometime, because that's what he basically said to Kano when he was ending the communication with him. And it's almost like it's an answer without answering. It's like, I don't want to go there. Is kind of like the answer.
It may be the best, to me, the best joke in the series. Like it's that perfect moment where a horrible, awful situation, and then they have just the right kind of humor. I don't know what's that term, gallows humor, but it sticks. That makes it one of my favorites as well for that reason. But absolutely, don't get me wrong, City on the Edge of Forever she's beloved in that. I mean, you couldn't get two different characters, one who's easy to despise because she pulls it off so well, and then one who's just so lovely.
Right. But depending upon which one you saw first, it's like if you saw Space 1999 first, you'd be like, oh my God, how could she play Edith Keeler? And then if you saw Star Trek first, you'd be like, oh my God, how could she be Kara? It's like, but that's the range of the actress or the actor in that case. Savannah has to leave, and just wanted to say thank you, Savannah, for coming on, and we appreciate it, and we hope to see you soon and talk to you soon.
For sure, Savannah, and to everybody over there in Italy, thank you again for everything, and we look forward to working with you guys in September, setting up the world's first Space 1999 simulcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very exciting. Yeah.
But coming back real quick, just in regards to the seriousness of everything, and like Warren said, Johnny Byrne indicating about this story almost being based on that, what had happened. I think it was like in 1972 when that plane went down, and there was I think about maybe 45 people or so that were on that flight, and then only maybe 30 some survived after the crash. And then after everything was said and done, after 10 weeks, there was only 16 that were alive, and and then they had to resort to cannibalism, which is horrific. And it really, the moral implications and everything that those people had to deal with. And even watching this show, the story, I mean, it's, the Alphans, it's like, I think what was almost terrifying is too, when Larry gets, taken out, and then they're dragged into that almost like arena. And when they see what happened to the mutant, Larry knows that he's not going to get past it, because, he knows about it, his finger, had been amputated or whatever had happened. He has a deformity. And when he's screaming, Dr. Russell, help me. And it was just like, oh my God, it was heart wrenching. And even at the point before that, Helena says before, I think when Nadine says, enough, take them away. And then they're dragging them away. And then she's like, we came to help. It's like, here you're on this rescue mission. And then the next thing you know, you're pretty much being almost you're on the menu. Yeah. It's crazy. Yeah. So there was a lot of, it was great direction. I mean, again, Ray Austin, brilliant direction.
For sure. We have another special guest in the background. Richard, are you pressed for time? You want to stick around for a bit? You're welcome to.
Yeah, I'll stick around for a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Well, this is a real treat here today. We were mentioning this fellow earlier on in the broadcast, so we'll bring him on by so everybody can say hello to Mr. Jeffrey Jones.
Nice background.
Hey, Jeff.
Oh, thank you. Hey, that's good to see you guys. Rich, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, Jeff.
So I'll apologize starting out. I'm in an RV resort right now, and my signal seems to go in and out. So if I get all fuzzy and disappear, that's okay.
Okay.
That's okay. Jeffrey, that's the nicest RV I've ever seen in my life. I want one just like it.
Very futuristic.
Yeah, it has a familiar look to it.
It really does. I like the I would almost say concept art.
Yeah. So
Jeffrey, you've had a good couple of months, and you're gearing up to join us in September, right? Sorry.
We're looking to see what we can do.
Okay.
Yeah. There may be some work-related difficulties, but one way or another, virtually or in person, we'll definitely be involved.
Nice. Well, we hope it all works out for you. And of course, that was the nice thing with doing that aforementioned simulcast, is even if you're not able to attend in person, you can join us and join other events all over the world, which is the exciting aspect is we're going to be linked up from Los Angeles to the SpaceCon event in Italy happening that same weekend. We're likely going to beam on over to the UK and hopefully check in with Daryl Simmons and some of the all sections Alpha crew over there. So yeah, it'll be very exciting and very nice for everybody literally to get together on Breakaway Day this year.
Sounds fantastic. So
yeah,
I'd emailed you. Oh, go ahead.
No, I
emailed you a Prentis story, just to be brief about it, but and it's probably one that many people have heard now, but it still sticks in my mind and makes me smile every time I think about it. And that was at the 79 convention where he was making his first appearance. And of course, we had the pleasure of being able to talk to the stars before their actual introduction. to all the fans.
Right.
And Prentis came out, and he had brought with him his comm from the show.
Nice.
And so he was showing everybody, and he handed it to me and to some of the other convention managers that were there. And he said, you notice all the buttons? And like, yes. And he goes, have you noticed that in the series, I'm pressing the buttons all the time? It's like, yeah, we noticed that. Just thought you were kind of like, getting essential data during special situations. And he goes, well, yeah, it may have looked like that, but the truth is there was a more mischievous reasoning behind it. And it's like, what was that? And he goes, well, frankly, every time I pressed a button, the sound crew had to add a beep. So I just wanted to keep them busy.
It's funny that you're telling that story, Jeff. The one episode that comes to mind with that is Full Circle. And he's holding the comm lock and he's doing what you just described. And you can actually hear the clicks, to your point. And then what happens is he winds up talking shortly then with Sandra. He's saying like good morning to her or whatever. And but to your point, you hear those clicks and you're thinking, oh wow, the comm lock is pretty cool, with that. And it's funny that he was messing with the sound guys.
Yep. And he was always such a fine gentleman. We had him at the 79 and 80 conventions, and just a wonderful person.
Well, in regards to his comm lock too, at the 1999 convention, that was auctioned off, and it went to to help a charity, and it was actually auctioned at $1,999 for 1999, which was
very nice, great appropriate price.
But it was pretty cool to see. In fact, I think the owner of that comm lock, and I think her name is Teresa, if I remember her name. I think she was at the 2012 convention that Warren and I were at, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, she brought it because I think I have some pictures of it, which is kind of cool. And Prentis, signed it, and she actually got other folks to autograph the comm lock as well too.
Wow,
nice. That's an excellent thing to have.
Yeah. It's cool that he kept it all those years too.
Aston's just chiming in, says, I believe we did the same thing during Another Time, Another Place, during the passage through the space phenomenon. Yes, right at the beginning,
Yes.
Aston,
Yeah,
I think.
in the beginning.
Yeah. You can see him.
He's by the
away.
windows, the port windows, and he's like clicking on them. Yep.
Working away at those buttons.
It's really sad that we know all this stuff.
It is.
it was important at that time.
It was.
And interesting though, fellas, the other thing that Prentis hung on to was the guitar that he played in Black Sun, and he also plays it in Guardian of Fury. And yeah, that was a prized possession to him for many, many years.
It's funny. I completely I've only connected with Black Sun before, but it's in Guardian of Fury too.
Yeah, it's in the medical center when they're having the party.
Yeah, no, it's funny how you can see things and just not notice them. That's cool.
Yeah. I didn't realize it either, and Bob Wood pointed that out to me just within the last few years, and I was like, well, of course, and it makes sense, right? but that was his own personal guitar that he owned before the series, and he brought it essentially to work with him.
Yeah, he purchased it, I think, in 1966. Which is pretty cool.
Yeah, so it's not even really fair to say that he kept it after the series. That was
it was already his.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Another strong episode I think for him that sticks in my mind is Last Sunset.
Definitely. It was nice that he had some good character moments with Nick, and also of course Xenia. And it really worked out well with that.
Yeah,
and he gets to act a little out of character too.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just saying, I was a huge Paul fan. His character, even though some of it is only mentioned, like in Voyager's Return, his relationship, with Sandra, which that was kind of the shining moment, the kiss. But there was something about his character that I kind of resonated with me, and I think a lot of it is what Prentis himself brought to the role. I never got a chance to ask him, how much he kind of brought personally into it, but I always got a sense he was reflecting. Paul Morrow was a bit of a reflection of what Prentice thought about the character, as opposed to just reading words on the page type of thing.
No, for sure.
Another recollection. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was going to say, I just have another recollection, and I don't remember if it was the 79 or 80 convention, but we were doing the charity auction, and I got drafted in to act as the auctioneer. And as an auctioneer, I'm horrible. I probably put more people to sleep than I get bidding on things. And Nick and Prentice were both there, and they kind of looked at each other, and they were like, let us help. And they came up and took over the auction. It was marvelously done. But again, so gracious of them just to step up and do that.
Yeah, that must have been a fun time with all of that, because I could see the two of them bantering and having a lot of fun with that.
Mm-hmm.
That must have been great to be a part of.
Yep. And it's just such a credit to Prentice and to Nick and the other cast members. They were just so incredibly gracious with the fans at all the events.
I couldn't agree more. I have a couple quick Prentice stories. The first one, kind of going more recent, in 2012 in Burbank, when him and Martin met, and he goes, Commander.
Yes.
It was so perfect. It was, imagine, I don't know if they'd seen each other since the show. And he just literally brought Paul Morrow out to John Koenig, in a sense. It was a really emotional kind of special moment. And whoever else was there and remembers it too, that's something that'll always stay with me. And it was so nice. I didn't really get so much of a chance to talk to him there, but there was another moment at the 2000 convention. So that was my first main mission in New York. And I can't remember all the details, but we were in the elevator together. And here I am, fanboy, and I'm blah, 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 how much I like the character and all that. And I was looking at him, and he kind of looked uncomfortable. And I go, is everything okay? And he goes, I'm diabetic and my sugar level has dropped. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry, and he's like, oh, no, it's not you. Here he is apologizing to me for him not feeling well. But that was something. And I'm just, well, I'll let you kind of go get some sugar or insulin, whatever the case may be. But there's just, I didn't have a lot of moments with him, but it's like those two really admired him. And I wish he could have been there last year in the UK.
Yeah.
But, I'm grateful for, having had the chance to meet him. That story about don't meet, your heroes. When it comes to space, they've been amazing. I've never had a disappointing moment, if I can put it that way. It was only great.
Yeah,
and I think that's another interesting point too. Is there's the public face and the private face, and many times the fans at the public face. But the great thing about the entire cast was their private face was just as genuine and just as nice as what the fans would see on the public side. Sometimes when you had things that didn't run quite as smoothly as you would like, they never complained. They were always happy to do whatever they could to help. Extremely supportive. So it was really a special group.
Yeah, and a lot of times things don't go as you want them to go. I mean, as we all know, there could be technical issues, there could be, mishaps, things that happen just that are out of your control. And unfortunately, you're you get in that moment and you try to handle it as best as you can. And we are very fortunate to have the Space 1999 family that we do, because they are very approachable. They are very welcoming to the fans, and they like sharing their stories, and they appreciate our love of the show, especially when you talk to each of them. The fact that it's 50 years later and the interest is there. But I think the other thing too, a lot of the fans or a lot of the actors or the stars really appreciate is the connection that the fans have with each other. And it really is a family in that sense. I mean, Barry Morse, I remember at the 99 convention, I've told this story so many times and folks know this, but it's just that, everybody's snapping their pictures and their cameras, and then Barry would take out his camera and then he would be taking pictures of the fans, because he wanted to kind of have that moment, treasured. And it was really cool.
No, 100%. Jeff's out there saying, thanks, guys. Prentice played Paul as a reserved and focused man who could be passionate in the right moment and venue. Paul was the quintessential team player who put the interests of the fellow Elfins above his own. Well said, Jeffrey. Yes, his character, he had his moments, like Richard, you mentioned Voyager's Return, right? So but that was, you could see why he was a little anxious in that episode, because we were learning a lot about his backstory, and the death of his parents. And things like that. So I mean, it was sort of written in a sense, but it was also coupled with Prentice's performance that really made moments like that shine. Right.
The way he played Paul, I always found there's something always bubbling below the surface, and that was one of those episodes where we got to see what the reason for that was. Obviously it's a TV show, but you can kind of look at his character, the arc through year one, and go, he's carrying a burden, that a lot of others don't, and he's faced this tragedy that others are now facing as they kind of went through that journey. And it wasn't always fun and pleasant, right? But there's just something I really liked about his character, and he didn't always get the love. I missed him in year two. I think for me, Tony was kind of a replacement of Nick, who was still on the show, of course, and Paul. But I still wanted Paul and Nick, right? So, or
no, for sure.
Alan and Paul.
Yeah, I always felt that Tony was like the replacement for Paul, and I remember, especially when the second season was on, that I would wait to see in the credits if I was going to see Nick's name in the credits, because I knew that was going to be the giveaway if he was going to be in the episode or not. I mean, maybe he wouldn't be in the teaser, but or I shouldn't say a teaser. There wasn't a teaser, but in the initial opening after the main credits, and if his name didn't show up, I was like, and it was kind of like a bummer. But it really bothered me how old was I? I was literally 10 years old when year two came on. And the fact that Prentice wasn't there, and Tanya wasn't there, and Kano wasn't there. As a 10-year-old, I was missing them. And then coming in, to find out years later, and I'm not trying to go down to year two bashing, because that's not my intention here. There were year two episodes I love, so I don't want to go down that route. But all I'm just saying is my disappointment in thinking that somebody in the higher position would think that nobody's going to notice their absence. It's like, really? It's like, it was definitely noted, and it was unfortunate. But unfortunately, that's something we'll talk about on a future episode of this, and when we go down that bridge. But definitely Prentice was missed, as was Clifton was missed as well, and Tanya. It was a great loss.
And I put it this way, I think year two would have been that much better with them.
Absolutely.
And like, I'll be honest, I like about half of year two, and the other half, it's a tough haul. But funny enough, my wife, who she's not a space fan, she likes watching it with me. We hadn't watched for a while, and she asked to watch a year two episode couple weeks ago, and we watched the Metamorph, and it's well done. It has the monsters or the aliens, whatever you want to call them. They do not look better on Blu-ray, but the episode's solid. It's entertaining. You just have to kind of look past what it isn't and appreciate it for what it is.
Yeah, it's almost like a transitioning, and it's a shame too. At least it's a shame that they didn't give that mention, and I didn't mention Victor too. I mean, Victor, of course, my God. I mean, that goes without saying with Barry. I mean, that was just so unfortunate. I mean, as much as I love Catherine Schell as Maya, it was such a loss to lose Barry Morse as Victor Bergman. But it would have been nice if there, and in the making of Space 1999, it's been referenced in other books as well, that there was a earlier draft scripting of where there's a conversation between Sandra and Tony, or Simon Hayes, I think maybe even before he became Tony Badashi, about Paul and Victor dying and Kano dying, and it's a shame. I think it was an Eagle crash or something like that, or faulty spacesuit. I think something
faulty spacesuit.
It was an Eagle crash in a faulty spacesuit.
Yeah, there we go. But
so, guys, I'm having all types of internet problems right now between being in the campground and some of the weather. So rather than have a little black spinny thing, I'm gonna wish you all well, and we'll chat again sometime soon.
Yeah, for sure.
Sounds good. Great seeing you, Jeff.
Thank you so much for joining us, Jeffrey.
Great to meet you, Jeff. Hope we can again.
Take care now.
See that. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Yes. A couple other comments, guys, and thanks to Jeff again for popping in there. Always nice to see him. And wow, you want to talk stories that go way, way back. Yeah.
I need to hear them.
Yeah. David Atchison's out there. Hey, David. Yeah. And there's something that I wanted to read out here. It really resonates. The stars welcome us as part of the family and vice versa. The space cons have been one of my best influences in my love for the series. Absolutely. And basically, the stars, I think, in my mind, appreciate us as much as we appreciate them, and it's been this yin and yang type of relationship, which is so unique. I'm involved in several fandoms, and it's not quite the same as Space 1999. We have a lot to be thankful for and grateful for sure.
Yeah, well said, Warren, and I really agree with David's commentary about that.
Yeah, no, 100%. A funny story real quick, guys, is you were talking about year two, and I was working in the background there, but I remember upon a sort of a mid to late 1980s rewatch where I hadn't seen the series for about 10 years because it just wasn't available, right? And it finally re-aired here and started, and Rich, you'll appreciate this. I think it was on CBC or maybe YTV here in Canada. And in Roy, you'll probably know the episode and the scene right away. I couldn't tell you from a hole in the ground what it is, but there's a quick scene in the weapons section in year two where there's a fellow working in the weapons section with a red sleeve and a mustache, and it's a quick shot, and it almost looked like Prentis to me.
Oh.
And it was just like one of those random fan thoughts. That, oh well, okay, so he's still there, but he's just been transferred or something.
I actually don't know this.
No,
you said it was a year two episode.
Yep.
And he's somebody that's working in the passenger module by the weapons.
No.
Oh, no. I know what you're talking. No. I got what you're talking. That's from the Beta Cloud.
Beta Cloud.
It's the Beta Cloud. It's because it's in the opening credits. It's in the opening credit, right after the opening credits, and he's sitting at a desk and he's writing, and he's got the red sleeve. And yes, absolutely. Sorry, I was thinking you meant Eagle for some reason because I'm thinking Eagle. When you said weapons section, I'm thinking weapons rack. But you even said weapons.
It's still hard to get used to the fact that they had a weapons section and the big laser gun. That always threw me, even in the show. It's like, just didn't feel like one of the things they would have, but yeah.
Well, I think I remember reading an article one time that, that was, in implementing all these changes, that was, and this might have been covered in the tech manual, I'm not sure, but it was something to the effect of that the Alphans had been through so many traumatic, life-threatening experiences throughout year one that they decided to beef up their defenses, right? and suddenly commission these big laser gun pistol things, and
Well, and the other thing too is, I mean, they even talk about, I mean, right out of Metamorph, raised, Tony's, talks about the defense shields. Defense
yeah,
shields, I mean, they were actually in the Last Enemy, and it essentially was the force field projector that Bergman had, constructed for the Black Sun, but it's just not something. It was kind of like almost like you could say modified. I mean, there's nothing in writing about it. I mean, it's just kind of fan speculation. But if you kind of carry it over, it has to be that at least. But we don't even get to see them during the second year. We only get to see it in the first season with Black Sun, and then the Last Enemy. When we see the one tower, it's blinking and then it goes out. But the reference is there at least, though. So.
Well, it's interesting in the Metamorph. I think they say that they're getting right through our screens, so kind of implying that they had their defensive screens up, even though we don't see them. And I know I just saw the episode, but doesn't the laser cannon get blown up by Mentor?
It gets blown. The laser cannon actually gets blown up in the Dorcons.
It's the Dorcons, okay.
And the interesting thing about that is the laser cannon that gets blown up is actually the laser gun, or actually it was a rocket gun that was used in the Last Enemy. Again, it was the one of those rockets or missile launchers.
Deltons there?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Because the really cool one that they only, if you think about it, they only really fired it where we see it is in the Beta Cloud.
Beta Cloud, yeah. Well, it would be pretty hard to, I don't know, trying to imagine a laser cannon and where it is on the horizon and where things are. It's I guess it's good if you're shooting an asteroid. Something stationary. Not so good if it's kind of zipping around on you.
Right.
But it was an interesting idea.
Yeah. No, definitely. And to Warren's point, it was almost, I think it was probably something that was referenced out of the writer's guide or something that, for year 2, that since they moved Alpha down to Command Center and against hostile alien attack, and then they constructed the laser defense ring. I think that's what it was referenced as, but nothing in canon. I mean, it wasn't referenced that way on screen, but yeah.
But Andrew's saying, guys, along those lines, I'm pretty sure in the technical notebook, Victor died during installing the laser cannons when his spacesuit malfunctioned. I think I remember that too, Andrew. Yeah, David Hirsch really did a good job at filling in that gap. For what was available at the time. I'm sure he had access to particular writers' guides and whatnot, but he did do a very good job with sort of bridging the gap between the two seasons.
Right, because there's a timeline in the technical manual, at least in the original one. Yes, that's right. Yeah,
I remember that as well.
So I've got a semi-interesting mission of the Darians story. So space, because you mentioned Warren when it was off the air, I hadn't seen it for a long time. So there was my last year at university in London, at Western. I think it was a station out of Barrie or something like that. And I don't even know how I found it, but they were showing Space 1999 year 1 episodes at like 1 a.m. on a Friday night. Well, when you're in university, you're usually not home at 1 a.m, and it turned out I got a job driving Canadian Tire parts. I had to be up early on Saturday mornings, and so it was hard to try and watch Space 1999. And what sticks in my mind is I tuned in. I'm like, I'm going to watch it this night. I fell asleep. And I think I woke up right at the end. So, but it was really special because I hadn't seen space on TV easily for 10 years. And it was this one little station, and I think it was out of Barrie or something like that, carrying space.
Look at David just put it up. Yeah, CKVR out of Barrie.
Oh my God!
Yeah,
wow!
You can remember.
Right on cue.
Thanks, David. I'm not dreaming. but I didn't see many. But the one I'm positive it was Mission of the Darians. Oh, get confirmation about the shields too.
Shields. There we go. There's so many people on the ball in this community that Roy, you always say, is it sad that we know these things? Well, no.
No, you know what? It's definitely not
all...
sad. It's scary that we retained all this information. Sad was the wrong choice of words.
No.
But the time gap between you,
minus 500 days.
Yeah, unfortunately, it was 877 days since the moon left the Earth's orbit with Dragon's Domain. But then what happens is it's 342 days, I think, when they are doing the metamorph. So there's somebody didn't do their math there. Or maybe you could say that the space warps and the time warps threw things off in regards to all of that. But that's where it gets a little tricky, though, because of the Dragon's Domain episode.
Well, later on, I felt very strongly as a fan, reconciling the two seasons, that was proof that this was an alternate, just like Another Time, Another Place. Maybe a third alpha got split off somehow. I don't know. But it was tough as a fan. You were constantly having to, but this character was in the show and now they're not. This was the date, but now it's not. Yeah, it was. You kind of wish you didn't have, like, if they just not even made a reference, it would have been better, because then you just would have known it's after Dragon's Domain, right? So
Jeffrey, he's commenting. Jeffrey, you're actually in my neck of the woods, because I'm always giving the plug to WPIX, and I remember this. WPIX in Europe ran the show at all odd hours into the mid-1980s after it was syndicated. WPIX had faithfully run it primetime on Saturday nights during the first run of both series. Believe it or not, Jeffrey, it actually started out on Sundays. And then what they did was they moved it over to Saturday. And then when they brought the second year back, it started on Sundays again. And the reason why I remember this, I actually have a cassette tape that I actually dated. And we were at my grandparents', and I remember the show was going to be on at 7:00 at night. And we were in Astoria, Queens. It was like a 45-minute drive, and I kept bugging my mom. It's like, are we going to leave? And then she was getting mad at me because we were at my grandparents, and it was kind of like rude, but it was the premiere of the Metamorph. I mean, my God, I didn't want to miss it. And we got home like with 5 minutes to spare, and I had my red Panasonic tape recorder all geared up, and I recorded that episode, and I still actually have the tape to this day. And to your point, WPIX, I mean, that was like a hub. In fact, Martin Landau would write in, and Warren. I mean, I'm opening the door in regards to the convention and the archives from Martin Landau. Bob Wood and David Hirsch, they have their book that they did, and he would actually keep track of the broadcast dates of when the show was going to be shown at the different cities, because for accounting purposes. And in regards to WPIX, after it went off the air, they continued to show it for some time, but there were sometimes they put it on like around like 1-2 in the morning. And that's when I would try to videotape them and get some of the episodes, because it was around 1979, 1980, and they would just do it arbitrarily. Or 1983, I'm sorry, I think it was 83, 84. And there was like a green tint to the prints too. It was very annoying. But fortunately, they later came out with the VHS. They did the special release for Columbia House. I don't know if folks remember that, when those were out, the videotapes. And then they did the laser discs, and then shortly after that, the DVDs. But there was that whole progression where 1999 went off the air, like what Warren was saying earlier, and if you didn't have it on cassette tape, or if you were lucky enough to have a video recording of it, you didn't get to watch the show for many years. It was, and what hurt Space 1999 too, from a syndicated standpoint, was it was only 2 seasons. So shows like Star Trek, which ran for 3 years, Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, Lost in Space, some of them went 3 or 4 seasons.
Twilight Zone,
5 seasons. I mean, there was more of a package for it to be shown, a syndicated package, and it'd be picked up. But with 1999, if they ran it every day, I mean, after like literally less than a month and a half, they would be through it, because there were only 48 episodes.
Yeah, and I think I'll just add quickly there. I think the reason why Martin tracked the PIX broadcasts is that that's actually how they got paid.
Yeah, they got paid for that.
Residuals was based on the WPIX broadcast.
Yeah, and Jeffrey, yes, WPIX butchered the episodes. In fact, there was when my parents moved out to this area of New Jersey from Bergen County. I started watching 1999 on Channel 17 at a WPHL out of Philadelphia, and I was pleasantly surprised to find out there was extra footage that I had never seen, and I was like, "Whoa, what is this stuff?" And then and what they did was they cut some things out as well. So the two shows would be running a week behind each other. So I'd watch it on 11 one week, and then I'd watch on 17 the other, and I was getting like the full episode. But they were 52 minutes long, but they were only broadcasting maybe 46, 47 minutes. And it was unfortunate. A lot of the stuff that got cut was character development, or just scenes that maybe, like, and I'll just use this as one example from the Metamorph, when the booster units are being put on Eagle 4, and then Helena is talking to Annette, and she asks her, where is she going? All cut out of WPIX. And then what happens is, they go to the travel tube to meet Tony and Annette meet Koenig at the travel tube. All cut out. Them boarding the Eagle taking off to head towards Saigon. All cut out. WPIX, it was like gone. Where they picked it up is where Koenig is saying, "Mentor, this is John Koenig. We're at rendezvous point." And it's like, wow. It's like all this extra footage that, as fans, we didn't even know about it if we were depending upon the syndicated views and depending upon where you live.
Yeah, not that it compares, but I've heard that Star Trek on some of these streaming networks has been getting cut, and I think it's the original one, and I'm thinking, wow, after all these years, you've got to cut the original show to
really, like on a streaming service. Well,
yeah,
I don't know why they do that, because they don't. I mean, the whole idea back in the 70s is it would make more time for advertising.
Yeah, and I'm not entirely sure. I just recall reading it and something, all these little tidbits that of information, but I'm not even sure. It might even be with Paramount Station, like online offering, and then they're editing some of the episodes of the show that they own. I don't get it. Doesn't make any sense to me, but I did read that was happening. So we haven't learned anything apparently, but
I guess.
Yeah. No, and Bill is even commenting about WPIX doing that to other shows. They did that to Star Trek as well too. He's absolutely right, because it was so annoying.
I'm going to bring up Eston's comment again. Sorry, guys. And Eston, this is an unusual case. So Maya's orange tree transformation is also cut a lot from the Metamorph when it was rerun. That's actually, it wasn't a cut scene. It was an alternate scene, or alternate version of the episode that was originally struck and aired in North America, I think, in a handful of stations one time only. And for some reason, the episode was then recut before most of the stations got a hold of it. So it's actually an alternate version of the entire episode. There's 5 or 6 different changes, including the orange tree scene. There's a different opening title sequence. And there's a couple other changes throughout. One of them is to do with a music beat, I recall. And there's a couple. Towards the end, the destruction of Saigon is a little more extended. And there's a few more shots of the planet exploding and things like that. And we know that, Roy, because we discovered that version on the Martin Landau Umatic tapes.
Yeah.
So that was a big, exciting. We'd all heard of it for many, many years. And I think there was some VHS versions floating around. But again, they would have been recorded off of television in the 80s. Late 70s, early 80s, and then, like, we're talking 5th or 6th generation copies existed. So you could, I mean, it was barely watchable. So to discover this new version off the U-matic, it was pretty crisp and clear in comparison. And we showed it actually in London last year. To a number of the fans, and keep on the lookout. There might be something happening in regards to a home video release of that version of the episode. We'll see.
Stay tuned.
Well, that'd be nice to see. Funny, I'd probably forgotten it, but I think I saw the original one when it came out on CBC, because the orange tree thing seemed to light up a neuron in there somewhere. So, but you kind of wonder who sat back and went, that orange tree just got to go. It's kind of comical. And the other changes, like you say, right? It seems so odd that they would prepare.
Well, I didn't mind it. I mean, in my mind, it sort of showed Maya's whimsical sort of sense of humor.
Yeah.
A little more, right? I mean, she plays the little trick on Mentor there.
And we see it later. She turns into a plant and sand spectre.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
You kind of wonder why, because it would take more work to make another version when one's already done. More money. I just find it odd. More explosions.
Hey, Missy.
Missy's out there. Welcome
to the show. More explosions, please. There were a lot of explosions in the Metamorph, especially at the end. And that's the other thing too that was kind of cool, because we get to see eagles coming from not off the launch pad, but it's actually they're launching from like the lower area of the launching pad, and we really don't have the opportunity to see that too often. So that's pretty cool. But we are going to be discussing more in depth the Metamorph down the road, not too far down the road, because we will be encroaching upon year 2. So, but I would like us to circle back to Mission of the Darians. And one of the fun things is to always, is to digress a little bit, which we've definitely been doing. But you can't go wrong when you digress with Space 1999, because there's just so much to talk about. But in regards to production values, this episode had a lot. I mean, the Daria itself was incredible. I mean, that model, which Brian was the creation of Brian Johnson and Martin Bauer, was really, really amazing. And then not only that, but just the sets, the matte paintings. Jeff Jones earlier was talking about that. I mean, I think there's at least 3 separate, if maybe not even 4 mats that are used. And I mean, when you see them, it's really, really cool, especially on the bigger screen. I mean, this is like literally 50 years ago. This episode was shot January 10th to January 23rd of 1975. So literally it just celebrated. It's coming up on its 50-and-a-half-year anniversary.
I can't get over how much of a Forbidden Planet vibe it has. Yeah. Like, I know early Trek does have some matte paintings that kind of have a bit of it, but there's a couple of shots in Mission that feel like they were pulled out of Forbidden Planet.
Yeah, no, they're incredible. Then that one specifically, and even there's a shot too where you have Koenig, Bergman, and Aiden and Kara. They're walking, and they're really. It's not a painting, but it's like the vastness in the background, the way they handled it, and it's really, really cool. I mean, just the whole set was amazing.
Well,
sorry, Richard, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, I was going to ask both of you, out of all of the episodes in year 1, in terms of epic scale, which one do you think would be at the level of Mission?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I was just going to mention that in my rewatch this week, and I mentioned this to Roy, one of the things I did is that in my little system here, I got a projector and a screen and whatnot. So I'm all about the theatrical experience. And space, another area where we're all really, really lucky, is the way it was shot and framed with the cameras that they did. It's very presentable in widescreen. We've seen a couple of examples of this. The recent Super Space Theater movies were cropped in widescreen. Dave Thomas and myself cropped Breakaway for the extended Breakaway version last year in London. So anyway, long story short, I threw on my projector in a widescreen mode and watched Mission this week. And I said to Roy, it is incredibly cinematic. It is, and especially those scenes with the matte paintings that we just popped up, they look beautiful. And so I think Mission is a really fine example of a near theatrical experience.
To answer your question, Rich, I think it's along the lines of Breakaway, really, because Breakaway really, I mean, especially with the model work, but even with the vastness, I mean, Moonbase Alpha to me felt the most operational, the most functional. It really felt like, even for the other episodes, I would say, but specifically in Breakaway, it really felt like a base where there was like so much going on, and it just really, I mean, you had a lot of personnel, and working in the background, different things happening, different departments. I mean, it just very operational type of presence, I'll say.
Yeah.
And then with obviously the cinematics of, the model work and everything that was done, especially later on in the episode, or even throughout the episode, not even later on. I mean, obviously with the explosion of the moon going out of the Earth's orbit and everything. But with Mission to the Darians, I mean, it's very large scale. I think there's a lot of impressive sets. And of course, we're just talking about the map paintings. So I kind of feel like it's along the lines of Breakaway, if I would have had to answer your question, for me personally.
Yeah,
and if I missed the context to your question, I apologize. I've been, but
are you being Warren?
Yeah, I know, all over the map here today. But
no,
I would add to that list then a favorite of mine next episode, Dragon's Domain.
Domain,
also very cinematic and that epic feel and scale. Yeah.
I was going to mention Matter of Life and Death, especially when they get to the planet. But I mean, the series as a whole. I mean, Force of Life. I swear I could just sit there and look at the nuclear generating area and then watch Alpha Child so I can see it again.
Yeah.
It's amazing, just utterly amazing. And
there's so many different examples and different scopes, different realities almost with the series, and it doesn't just stick to one area. And almost pardon the pun, it just dives into so many different pieces, I guess you could say. Speaking of pieces, how about the double helix is it's referred to as in the gene bank, the DNA bank.
And Roy, I got to say that you've referenced this character a couple times, and I think you're confusing him with the other character's name. So this is Neiman.
Neiman. I keep saying Hayden. Hayden was the other guy.
And yes, Hayden was the other fellow.
Yes. Neiman. Neiman was the god. I mean that's something Rich kind of was talking about earlier too. I mean, the different things that are the different points that are brought out in this episode. I mean, even when Neiman is telling them about or actually it was Kara when she's telling Koenig and Bergman what has happened, and he says, she says, we gave them a god, and Koenig is like, you gave them a god, like, oh my god, I mean, no pun intended. It's like, what did you, what are you doing? And it's, I mean, that's, you talk about influencing people, and you talk about being judged and the moralistic implications of that, and it's a lot of stuff going on in this episode. A lot of stuff.
And it's funny, to your point, Roy, I think it was a Starlog magazine that kind of was critiquing space. I think it was more year one, and it didn't know what it wanted to be. And I'm like, it absolutely knew what it wanted to be. It wanted to be everything. It wanted to be, epic. It wanted to be mysterious. It wanted to be, and to me, I've always felt it was character driven. We just didn't get quite enough, but they packed as much in 52 minutes, I guess, as they could, right? But there's so much that, like you say, with this, you could you could almost use it as a case study. I
Mhm.
really believe that. The Alphans, how do they react to this emergency message? Well, let's go help.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, what happens when they get there? Oh my God, they've had their own nuclear disaster. It resonates for me in so many ways, and it's a favorite. And I'll say, I don't have to put one down to put one up.
Right.
You
You
know,
don't. No.
they're in a lot of ways. So many of the greatest episodes are so different. They 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 stand on their own, and kind of to your point, City on the Edge of Forever. It's great, but it's very character driven. You know, there's not a lot of space stuff in it,
No.
but it's awesome. You know, all you need to do is see The Guardian. And apparently, I read who was the one that did most of the sets, like the like the Keith Will.
Oh, Matt Jeffries for
Yes,
Star Trek. Matt Jeffries.
I guess he couldn't be. He wasn't available to design the Guardian, and they had some other guy did it. And when he came out, he's like, "What is this thing?" So
I
he
don't
wouldn't
know.
have designed it that way, but I think it was perfect because it looked so odd,
Yeah.
right? You get that different kind of element out of it, and Space did that. I think episode to episode in so many ways. But back to even at its core, what you have is a king and a queen who they're trying to survive off the peasants,
Yeah.
if I'd sum it up that way. And the Alphans are very democratic, and they come in there and they're like, no, there's no kings on Alpha, right? Something like that.
Yeah. And even when it comes to they're and Koenig, to your point, they're trying to even help even after everything has happened. Koenig is trying to figure out how they could maybe help them, and they could co-mingle and make things work. And he says, we'll check it out. And then they start going through the computer, and then that's when they find out, there's a missing element to all this, and then it starts to get unraveled. And it's when when Bergman says that, he said he wasn't entirely correct when he said that, these components are not on the ship. He's like, there's one way, one source that it is there on the ship. And then that's when Koenig looks at him and he says bodies, and it's like, it just goes right through you, because it's like, he said that's it, human bodies. And
Interesting comment here, guys. Cerise is saying, I do wish Mission of the Darians was early in the episode watch timeline, which is subjective to begin
Sure.
with. But would it be that much more darker if it was an earlier one of the first contacts that the humans had, or the Alphans had with a race like this? That's very interesting. We've debated several times on these episodes about the watch order and production order versus, would it work better any other way? And that's a very interesting point because yeah, I find that a lot of the early episodes, and again, because they were finding their way as a production, they didn't have the intensity that I think was needed a little earlier on, especially after what they just been through. I mean, this was a life-altering event, breakaway, and they were thrust into deep space, and that's I think a really good point is that this might be better served to resonate a little heavier if it were viewed early.
Well, you know what, though? Really, if you think about it, it's the same thing that happened to think about it. What happened to Moonbase Alpha? There was a terrible explosion. There was a terrible explosion on the Daria, and what happened was radiation was released. Well, the moon, the nuclear waste dumps exploding, that radiation could easily have affected the Alphans. I mean, they didn't go in that direction with the storyline, but
it could have.
It could have. And
just as you're saying it, it's like,
to the point about having this episode maybe instead of Black Sun be the third episode, you had this be the third episode. I mean, I always think, it's appropriate with Matter of Life and Death being the second, even though that's not supposed to be, it's not supposed to be meta. And growing up, I always thought it was meta, but it's not. But the point is that it would have been interesting, because then the Alphans would be like, oh my God, this is what could have happened to us. So that could have been the motivating factor too, with them trying to help, because it's like, what, we just went through what you went through. And especially when they find out what happened, not so much, they know that the ship is where it is, but when they get there, they probably would have sympathized more so with the Darians, at least with Joan Collins and Dennis Burgess's characters, and it would have been a different type of motivating factor. So that's an interesting commentary about if it, instead of being a latter episode, and 22nd episode in this case, because that's what it was in production order, if it was like maybe the third episode. Yeah. So great comment.
Well, it is, and just to piggyback off that, I think you mentioned Black Sun, for example, in my mind, works better as a later viewed episode. And I think that's why I like Testament of Arcadia so much, and Collision Course, mid to late season viewings. It's just because of all those philosophical elements. I think it's more impactful and emotional, and there's more of a resonance with some of those episodes. I think it was too early for Black Sun, and I think that's why it's not one of my favorites. Had it been produced later in the series, who knows?
And then to Rich's comment too, I mean, what he said, and I remember that comment. It may have even been, like you said, it, Starlog magazine or some, definitely some kind of source material. But Space 1999 was not trying to be Star Trek, but unfortunately, a lot of the people that watched it wanted it to be Star Trek, and that's why they didn't like it. It's like Space 1999 was its own entity, and unfortunately, with year 2, in a lot of ways, not always, because it still had its own, but it was going in that direction. And the other show, which unfortunately I did like a lot, at least in its first season, and then the second season was horrendous, was Buck Rogers. And it was like, oh my God. I mean, they even had, what's his name? The actor that played Kelso, Paul Carr, on the show. I mean, and again, I'm not trying to, poor guy's an actor. He's not, he wasn't, he was only in he was only in the second pilot of Star Trek, Where No Man Has Gone Before. But the point is, though, it's just that, the Searcher and everything, and I'm not trying to go down a Buck Rogers, rabbit hole. But the point is, again, it was like it was a Star Trek affected that show. I mean, then they did the Lost Tribes, and of course, it was almost like Battlestar Galactica with the the plot line, what was driving them, look for the Lost Tribes of Earth. But the point is, with Space 1999, even Martin Landau said it in one of the Starlog issues. I mean, when he was being interviewed, the one with Short Circuit on the cover, if I remember the number. But he even said it didn't have that time to be its own, and it's a shame it wasn't given it. And it would have been very interesting too if there had been a third season. Unfortunately, Raise the Titanic, sacrificed space. It was the entire third season's budget. But it would have been interesting what direction the show would have gone in. There was talk that maybe Tony Anholt wouldn't have come back. I've read that. There was even talk that Catherine Schell potentially would have had her own series. I mean, there was talk, a spinoff where maybe 13 episodes. That was something that was talked about. But if 1999 itself had a third year, it would have been interesting what stories that they would have gone with. And, maybe Johnny Byrne would have been doing more, and they would have had him back. Maybe, who knows, maybe Chris Penfold would have come back. I don't know. It's just, it is what it is. And, it's again, great discussion for another time. Yeah. But it still kind of ties into what we're talking about in regards to the premise and the direction the show could, may have gone in.
Well, if I may, I kind of wish I'd throw a different thought on there as well. Similar but different in that if year 1 had been able to continue in year 2 more or mostly as year 1, same cast, same sets, and see where they could have gone with it then, and then what would a year 3 have been like from there. And they still could have had a resident alien. They still could have done a lot of things. I always wonder if they had the decision about year 2 had come after, say, the Christmas season with year 1 and the build of the fan base and all that. I think they got what they wanted. They just wanted it too early, and the show was finding its way. But by then, it was almost too late, right? They'd already made those big critical decisions.
Yeah, there was a lot against it too, because the problem is, I mean, if you think about it, when shows are being produced, I mean, they're being televised too. I mean, generally, I mean, at least the way it used to be back then. I mean, I'll use Star Trek just because I know Star Trek in regards to it. Star Trek started filming in May of '66, and then what happens is, they film right through the spring. Then in September, it comes on. It's the the fall preview, and it's being televised. And then the episodes continue, and then what happens is they judge the ratings, and they get the green light to continue more. I mean, back then they were doing 20. They did 29 episodes, if you count the pilots for that. So there was 27 new episodes. And depending upon how the ratings are going, they're gonna say, okay, you can do an additional 6 episodes. So you go from 23 to 29. The show doesn't get canceled, and then they have to make the decision if it's going to go from the first season to the second season and everything.
Sure.
Unfortunately, with Space, they were going to try to have. I think Space was supposed to be on CBS. It was supposed to be on in 1974, and ironically enough, and this is detailed in, I'll give David Hirsch and Bob Wood their the plug in regards to their book.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, CBS backed out, and they went with Planet of the Apes. And I love the original Planet of the Apes films, with Charlton Heston and everything. But the series only lasted 13 episodes, so that tells you the direction of how that went.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, 1999 was filmed. They did the 24 episodes, but it was done. You know what I mean?
There's that delay.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was like, if they were going to have it come on as a show, the networks weren't picking it up. So then they went the syndicated route, and it was done that way. And then, of course, then the ratings come through as far as what ITC is thinking, or what is evaluating what the people are thinking and the fans are thinking, if they're enjoying it. But the show was released at the end of September, and then you're reading by, I think, December or January what's going to happen, and already it's like, okay, year one is not, the show's going to be canceled. I mean, canceled in the sense that they're not going to make any more.
Yeah.
And the only way that they were going to make more is if these changes went through, or it would have just been dead in the water. So without the changes, we never would have had year two. So it is what it is. But it's something that fans will debate about and talk about, and I get it. I mean, I was there. I mean, you were there. We were all there. That for the most part, and it was a very frustrating type of time.
Yeah.
You know what, Rich? We've talked about this before, you and I, and what you're describing is the ultimate what if story. What if the changes weren't made? But on top of that, just listening to you fellas here, it made me think of one other component here. So aside from whether or not there would have been any changes, we talked earlier about the cast members not returning, like Prentis and Clifton, and even Anton Phillips, to a certain extent. I think year one, when it started out, these were probably, according to the writers, secondary characters, but they grew so quickly to be an ensemble towards the end of year one. That's why it stung a little more going into year two and not seeing these people, because had year one been given the chance to just branch out a little bit, as opposed to making all the drastic changes. The crime in my mind really isn't that there were new ideas incorporated into year two, but it's the fact that so much was discarded at the same time.
Yeah.
Right? If they would have kept a lot of those year one elements in place, but simply added and tweaked it a little bit here and there, right? I think that would have led to a more organic, interesting year three. Perhaps.
But the problem was you had one person, and I'm really thinking, I mean, based on what I've come across, it's almost like one person that was calling the shots, that was coming in from the outside, did not watch all the 24 episodes, maybe watched 6 to 8 episodes, and was turned off by a lot of different things that had been established, and pretty much felt that, it's almost like, and since we're bouncing back with Star Trek a lot, remember that quote from Star Trek 2 when McCoy says to Admiral Kirk, why don't we just put an experienced crew on board? And then Kirk says, gallivanting around the galaxies is a game for the young doctor. Well, this person almost felt like, let's eject the older people out And some of these people that were ejected weren't even old at the time, but the only person would have been, and the irony is, I mean, I'm older than what Barry Morse was, back when he was doing the series. You know what I mean? It's like, how could you not like Victor Bergman? It's like, it was like he was this like old dude, like he didn't belong there, and it's like you just wanted to have young people all around, and that's fine. But again, I guess my point is, he had his preconceptions of what he wanted, and he was given the power. So it's like absolute power, whatchamacallit's absolutely, destroys absolutely. I can't think of it. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm getting old. I'm forgetting my quotes.
No, you're fine.
The point
You're
is,
fine.
though, it's just that you're giving the power to one person that has the power of, to make these decisions. Anton, if I remember correctly, walked away because he would have been on, but he didn't. He felt that it wasn't the same atmosphere. I mean, he did not.
It wasn't. I mean, essentially, it was all business oriented. It was dollars and cents. Year one didn't make money,
Exactly.
so it came down to Jerry and Lou Grade, right? And because Lou was the bankroll, saying, well, okay. I mean, because I think it was actually canceled, right? And then it was Jerry. A quick thinker as he was, right, spinning this into, okay, well, what if we make these changes, right? So he had to pitch it like that. The changes had to be drastic, or Lou Grade wasn't going to hear it.
Basically, it was going to be Martin and Barbara, and it was going to be Catherine and Tony Anhalt. I mean, Xenia, I don't think was supposed to be there. Anton wasn't supposed to be there, and Nick wasn't. Nick was gone. There was going to be a character, Mark McClintock. He was going to be the Chief Eagle pilot, and Nick tells the story. And he wasn't under contract. And in fact, he walked out. I mean, it was, what was it? The Tabor, because he's in the they have John Hugg in that scene where he's in the moon buggy, and Nick saw the script and he took the script and he threw it and he said, "I'm out of here." And they were like, "You can't go." And he's like, "Why can't I go? I'm not under contract. I'm not I'm not contracted. I'm out of here." And he even said he left and he went on a whatchamacallit with, I don't know if it was, I think it was probably Hazel. He went on holiday. He said he went skiing, or he went to I think it was Austria or whatever, and he was gone. And then the agent was trying to get in contact with him, and then they basically wanted him to come back, and then he did. Xenia walked away. She was gone after One Moment of Humanity. That's when, and I love Yasko. I mean, Yasko is one of the sweetest people, and I'm so thankful to have connected with her and have her in our community. And then later on, though, Xenia came back and I think the story is that maybe Barbara Bain reached out to her, and then Xenia did come back. So she came back with Catacombs of the Moon, and then she was back up until Seance Spectre. Anyway, we're digressing, but it's just that we really need to cover this like during the buffer episode of where we're transitioning.
We're going to have a few weeks in there, Roy. I think we'll be able to know for sure. And listen, real quick, Philip Leavenworth's out there. Thanks for joining us, Phil. And listen, I didn't mean to take credit for your idea. If you mentioned that before about like some of the aspects of year two, but the subtractions hinder a lot of it for sure. Absolutely. And then Jeff followed up with something very interesting. Saying that, and I agree with this part of it, and it's on point with the discussion here, guys. I can't help but think that Freiberger, oops, I lost it, could have made some different choices since he was the producer. And yes, you're absolutely right, because I think, as we had just mentioned, if they would have kept a lot of the year one elements, but added things like, say, for example, the humor. I think the humor in year two wouldn't have worked with a character like Bergman. It just wouldn't. It wouldn't have jived. It would have been forced and unnatural. And
the show had a different. The show had a different tone.
It did.
I mean, that's the reality of the situation. David brings up a great comment. Makes one realize how much Sylvia contributed to the show. That's another thing that Nick has always talked about. Yeah. Absolutely, great point, David. She was the people person. She was the one that cared about the actors, the actresses. She was the one that really, worked with them and really created that bond.
Yeah.
And it's Missy is saying that Xenia talks about that in her book. So yeah, that's what we were just talking about.
I was going to throw a thought out to you. So Battlestar Galactica came out as a movie and then launched as a series. So Space is being made, and I know that there was talk about going to Khan and what episodes. But what do you think if they had actually put Breakaway with Mission of the Darians as a compilation movie and brought that out before the series started? Like, the more and more we kind of talked about Darians tonight and the epic quality of it and a lot of the elements and the darker stuff, and it has so much to it. Do you
I
think?
think it would have worked well as a second act to
Yeah.
a theatrical presentation. Yeah, I think you're
Yeah.
right.
And that to me would have given Space a whole, there's a kickstart. Hopefully it does reasonably well. I know there was sci-fi on at that time, but really there wasn't a ton of action type of sci-fi, right? 2001, great, but very slow. Planet of the Apes, really good, but different. It wasn't really in space. You've got Omega Man, you've got
Mega Man,
those kinds of things going on. I think Space would have really could have, with those two episodes, drawn some interest. And I think there was a lull there too in both TV shows and movies around the 73, 74 time point. Yep. I think David likes that. Good stuff, David. Like,
Everybody's in agreement. Yeah. Yeah. Phil said so. Yeah.
I really wish, if they were going to try and make a big splash, that's what I'm trying to get at. I think those two episodes could have gone well together, and people would have walked out of the theater, especially if they knew the series was coming. Hey, starting in September, at the end of the movie, guess what? Check your local station, blah, blah, blah. So,
well, it's interesting too, because it's kind of a side note. Fanderson just announced, and it was, I believe, today, that they're doing a special release of the Space Theater. So that's a shout out to Fanderson right now. So
is that Prisoners in Space, the new one they've done?
So yes, I just saw that today. So they've
Yeah.
commissioned a brand new compilation movie. It looks like out of a couple of year 2 episodes. And so I'm not sure David Hirsch will probably have some insight there.
Yeah. I want to definitely connect with him on that. So
Devil's
Jamie Anderson.
Planet, and I saw a few of the shots. And I
yeah,
thought,
because they're talking about Prisoners in Space, and I guess they're talking about Dorzak. Dorzak and Devil's Planet were the two that were that were mentioned for that. So definitely go online and definitely check that out. Do a search on that.
Interesting. And the other a supplemental feature I made note of that sounds very interesting is the inclusion of the fan film Return of Victor Bergman.
Yes, I saw that
on that release. That's great that they're everybody at Anderson Entertainment is open to supporting the fan side of things as well. That was something that Bob Wood got involved with Eric Bernard, I believe, a number of years back. And interesting.
So definitely check out Anderson Entertainment. It's under the official Jerry Anderson logo. If you go on Facebook and do a search on that, and again, it was just announced today, so very, very cool.
Hot off the presses, everyone.
Yep, Missy's said I'm ordering those. Yeah, it's very cool.
Is there any more news about, was it Breakaway in 4K? I remember reading something a couple months back.
Oh, sorry. What?
Yeah. Is there anything that can be shared? You just have to be patient.
Well, I think let me just say that it's going to be a very good year for Space 1999 fans, and considering that this, of course, is
all right.
A lot of people would consider this the official 50th anniversary.
Yeah.
So,
just like the show itself,
it's never ending, Richard. It's the show that keeps on giving, and we're just so thankful to be a part of it all.
That's awesome. Well, I await further news. All channels are open.
I mean,
No.
it's not a big secret, but I mean, I think the the general consensus is that everybody's aware that they're probably going to start with a test disc for this new format, 4K, right? And of course, it makes sense to start with a breakaway. You know, it could be very interesting, some of the supplemental features that might be included. But you know what? It's a really good because space is such a niche market, right? But they did this several years ago when they were converting year two, right? Year one had already been done and it was in the bag. Network did it, but there was this big long gap for year two, and it's because it costs money, right? It's very expensive to process things. From film into high definition, right? So Network started with a test disc of, I think you guys will remember, Bringers of Wonder.
Yep.
And speaking of compilation movies, of course, that's the ultimate and Destination Moonbase Alpha. But that test disc did very, very well, considering it wasn't even a pilot or anything like that. So it showed Network, the market, the demand for space on home video is still there, even close to 50 years later. And even when, you know, as we're going through this phase where physical media is even maybe dying off, right? But it's these new formats like this 4K Ultra that you know are keeping things alive. So
I always want my copy. I always want my physical copy, because you depend on licensing as far as being able to stream something. You have it today, but you know what? Boom, gone tomorrow. And it's like, you know what? And these people, everybody's entitled to their opinion, but in my opinion, why would you not want to have the physical disc or the physical material? It doesn't make any, you know, we're going down a rabbit hole with that. If you lose your streaming service, or you lose the internet, whatever, if you cannot, you know, stream, your stuff is definitely gone. Yes, Corey, I'm with you 100%.
I meant to mention Corey is out there. Welcome, my friend.
And to your point, Roy, what was, oh goodness, I'm losing my train of thought here. It'll come back to me. There was something I wanted to share, and it's about that very topic. So I'll wait till it finds its way back.
It'll come back.
Missy said, our physical copy means we have something that isn't being broadcast now, cut and chopped. Exactly. And Philip is saying, that being said, I need to get to the show on Blu-ray. But yeah.
Corey's comment from earlier, we were talking about, you know, all of the trivia things that we've retained over the years and things like that. And Corey said it the best. It's just called being a fan, a well-informed fan, but we're all just fans.
We're all just aliens.
Yeah, until we get to know each other.
Yeah.
Exactly. Remember that.
But Warren, I just want to say we are at the 2-hour mark.
Saw that too.
Yeah.
So, I haven't even, and wow, did this one just fly by?
It really did. So I think, you know, just in regards to winding down.
Winding down? No way. We've still got like the viewership hasn't dropped off this episode.
Go grab a drink.
No. I'm actually, if you guys want to keep going,
you need to go. Yeah, no, but we should wind down. I could stay a little while longer, but I think we've covered everything. I think we touched on all the bases, and 2 hours is a nice wrap up.
Yeah. Well, if I may, I just remembered the thing that was
there. You go. Yep.
Last word, Rich.
For people who have PVRs and buy movies online, just a word of warning, I've been reading that at any time, even though you've paid for it, it's not yours. You do not have like a permanent access to this movie, even though you paid for it. So to anyone thinking about, you know, I don't know why you want to pay like $24.99 to watch a movie that just came out when you could hopefully buy it and have the copy of it for probably not much more. But when I heard that, I was upset, and I've never done it. But imagine you've spent hundreds of dollars to have these movies on your PVR, and then the next, you know, you go and it's gone. Sorry, because you do not own it. You own the right to watch it as long as they decide.
Exactly.
So that to me is prime proof. They have to pry that disc out of your, you know, your dying hands.
It's
right?
the same old argument with any type of physical media, whether it be a vinyl record or anything. It's just so much nicer to hold something physical in your hands, I think.
No, that's yeah, because there's no guarantee. Once it's gone, and then you're left just watching a blank screen. Give me the Blu-rays. I want that physical copy, or the 4K discs, whatever the case be, or the DVDs. But guys,
now, the variable being that you still have to wait to have a way to play it.
Yes. Well,
right? Because
yeah. I mean,
who's got a laser disc player nowadays?
I still do.
Yeah.
Do you really?
Yeah, I haven't played a Laserdisc for a few years. It doubles as a CD player too. The little tray comes out. But
I have the two versions of the Space Laserdisc like in frames hanging on my wall, just because they're such beautiful artwork.
That's a good idea. No, it's a beast, and it still fires up. I try
like
and
a
play it every
helicopter
so
take off.
often. Yeah, but someday it will no longer fire up. Funny enough, not to keep talking, but when the tapes came out and that, what got me back into space was the Laserdiscs. I didn't get the big sets of the Japanese ones. Unfortunately, they were way out of my price range. But that's how I managed to start watching space again. It had been since, except for late night and, from the Barrie station. It was like 1977, 78. And then in 1992 or 3, it's like, oh my God, I can watch it again. So it was
J2
nice.
Communications. It was the very reason I bought my first Laserdisc player.
Yeah. So it's I don't want to let it go. but as a one cool note on Laserdiscs, for some reason the intro to Troubled Spirit is in stereo.
Oh.
Every episode of Space on Laserdisc is mono, but for some reason, and nobody knows why, the intro is stereo with the sitar and
the big
music.
Jim Sullivan track.
Yeah.
I remember that. I remember that clearly. Yeah. It sounded so much, and you couldn't. Well, I couldn't even tell at the time because, I probably had speakers hooked up, so I probably was listening in stereo. But yeah, that's a very interesting point.
It's cool. But another little Space 1999 oddity, not quite the orange tree, but
no, well, that's great. That's wonderful. Well, no, listen, Richard, thank you so much. This has been a really fun episode again, and thanks for helping out here and jumping on and being a part of things.
Always a pleasure.
Yep, good seeing you, Rich, and thank you.
And
thank
guys
you, Warren. This has been great.
Yeah,
and thank you everyone for joining us. And so we appreciate you being out there and having these discussions, and we will be announcing when we do our next episode, which everybody knows will be Dragon's Domain. So that should be maybe in a couple weeks ahead. It's going to be not next week. It's not going to be obviously this Sunday. It won't be next weekend, but maybe the following. But stay tuned, and we will keep everybody opposed to that.
That'll be a big one. I think we're most definitely going to be live for that one as well. And Missy said something about an 8-hour broadcast. So if you want to see Dragon's Domain, the 8-hour
my record is 4 hours and 45 minutes with Nick Tate doing an interview, and I swear that's how I got kidney stones. I did not break to go to the bathroom for that show.
Well, it is the grandmother of Alien, right?
It is. Absolutely. So on that note, guys.
Awesome. Okay, well, thanks to everybody again, and we appreciate your support. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel, and we will see everybody in the coming weeks for Dragon's Domain. Thanks so much.
Take care, everyone.
Take care, guys.